Talk to me about this Washington Post editorial, please.
Sure. So a new article came out that asks the question whether Bitcoin is going to displace the US dollar as the global reserve currency. And their short answer is no. And these are the reasons that they give, which I want to unpack for a little bit. They say the volatility of Bitcoin's price, I think that's a legitimate concern. Then they say its strictly limited supply also makes it inappropriate for such a role. And that kind of made me take a step back and just go like, isn't that why people love Bitcoin? Don't they love it because it's not sitting at the whim of an elite few who can dictate how much our money is worth at a given time by printing more of it? And so, I mean, it's fascinating that the Washington Post cited that as a reason why this could never become the global reserve currency. I guess their point is that it's subject to the whims of supply and demand. You want something that can be pegged and all of that. But I mean, people can still push the price and move markets either way, even if it's subject to the supply whims of supply and demand. But I would say, personally, I would say that makes it completely appropriate for being a global reserve currency, the fact that there is a strictly limited supply. What are your thoughts on this? Ben, I'm going to toss that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, rather than this being an ongoing war, in some ways, I think the fact that the question is being asked points to the value of Bitcoin in this instance. This wasn't even a conversation a long time ago. And so, the fact that the Washington Post is writing opinion pieces about whether this is going to be the case moving forward shows the staying power that it has. So again, I'm a little skeptical that it's going to overtake the dollar in this regard, but it's going to be an alternative mechanism out there and one that's going to be continue to be watched. And we'll see what other opinion or editorial boards weigh in on this. What about you, Jen?
I think the fact that these questions are being asked points again to what I say often on this show is the need for more education on how these things work and how people can use them and will use them moving forward. But I think, again, that it's great that the questions are being asked and that we're discussing them on shows like this and on other mainstream media platforms so that people can, go and do the research for themselves and form their own opinions. And that might put pressure on regulators to listen and to educate themselves as well. So all in all, I think it's good that pieces like this are being published.
Yeah, and they did mention something else. So immediately after that, when they said, almost certainly not, this couldn't be a global reserve currency, then they say a more immediate danger is the exploitation of cryptocurrency for money laundering and fraud. I just wonder, when is it going to get to a point where we step away from this narrative? It drives me batty. This has always been the narrative. Whenever you have a new technology, it's always slammed in the press, right? This goes for when steam engines first came around and all throughout history. And it's no different with Bitcoin. And since the early days, this has been, treated as this tool just for criminals. And here the Washington Post, even after you have companies like MicroStrategy and Carnegie Mellon, you have Tesla, you have all these institutional players are getting involved, right? And still it hasn't been legitimized in the eyes of Washington Post. They're still like, well, the biggest concern is money laundering. I just it's very clear that the laundromat of choice is the US dollar. It's the federal treasury, right? That's what all the criminals use.
Yeah, I saw a tweet to that effect the other day. It was like every single person in prison in the U.S. has used the U.S. dollar, and so I think that kind of gets at the heart of the matter in this regard. I think that's a little bit of an outdated view. It's a tool. It is used by various people for different things, but you shouldn't blame the tool for that. I mean, there are also privacy coins out there that are a huge part of this conversation come under a lot of scrutiny. We've seen some of those getting delisted because they offer, more privacy than Bitcoin in some instances. But for example, I know that the RAND Institute, which is a think tank here in the US, connected to the US military in some instances, but they did a study looking at terrorism financing and found that it's not these privacy coins that are being used in some of those things. It is Bitcoin. And so this debate keeps going around in circles. And it's like, oh, what's going to be the favorite thing of criminals? What are some of the reasons that we can, kind of spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt in terms of the uptake on this? So I think it's just really important to remember that it is a tool just like anything else, and it is used by various people to various ends, but that does not increase the inherent value of the tool, which is a conversation that can be said for all different sorts of tech.
Mm-hmm. And the final thing the article brought up was that The focus on Bitcoin's rise tells us about the risks that are bubbling up amid the Federal Reserve's commitment to zero interest rates. And I think that's a really interesting topic. I think that's what a lot of people are considering when they're buying into this. They're looking at the fact that if they hold their money in cash, they're losing at least 2% a year to inflation. So zero interest rates actually means negative interest rates if you count in inflation. And so I think Elon Musk hit it on the head when he tweeted out that when fiat currency has negative real interest, only a fool wouldn't look elsewhere. And that's sort of where we're at with people looking at alternatives.